The vast, gleaming halls of the Galactic Council sat in an uneasy silence, the air thick with tension and uncertainty. For centuries, the ruling alien species had enjoyed their assumed dominance over the stars, secure in the knowledge that no single civilization could hope to challenge their authority. But all that was about to change. In the dimly lit corners of the council chambers, the representatives from dozens of alien worlds exchanged furtive glances and hushed whispers. Something was amiss. A restlessness had settled over the proceedings, a palpable sense that the carefully balanced order was on the verge of being shattered. Suddenly, the grand doors swung open, and every eye in the room turned towards the figures that strode confidently through the entryway. At their head was a tall, imposing human male, his stern features and penetrating gaze commanding the attention of all present. This was General John Hawkins, the brilliant military strategist who had masterminded humanity's rise from the ashes of exile. Flanking Hawkins were several other humans, each one radiating an aura of power and purpose. They moved with the practiced precision of seasoned warriors, their every step conveying a sense of unwavering resolve. The Galactic Council representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their previous arrogance giving way to a growing unease. As Hawkins and his entourage approached the central dais, the murmuring in the chamber died away, replaced by a deafening silence. The human general's eyes swept across the assembled aliens, his gaze unflinching and his expression unreadable. "Greetings, esteemed members of the Galactic Council," Hawkins began, his deep, resonant voice filling the cavernous hall. "It has been far too long since humanity has graced your presence." The alien representatives exchanged uneasy glances, uncertain of how to respond to this sudden and unexpected appearance. Hawkins paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in before continuing. "You may be wondering why we have chosen to return after all these years," he said, his tone measured and deliberate. "The answer is simple. We have come to reclaim what is rightfully ours." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber, and the council members erupted into a cacophony of outraged protests. How dare these humans, these exiles, demand such a thing? They had been cast out centuries ago, their actions deemed unforgivable by the greater galactic community. What right did they have to make such bold claims? Hawkins raised a hand, silencing the din with a single commanding gesture. "You would do well to hear us out," he said, his voice unwavering. "For we have returned with a power that you cannot hope to match." The human general turned and nodded to one of his companions, who stepped forward and activated a holographic display. Suddenly, the vast expanse of the council chamber was filled with the towering image of a colossal warship, its sleek, angular lines and gleaming hull suggesting a technological sophistication that far surpassed anything the alien species had ever seen. Gasps of awe and fear rippled through the gathered representatives as they beheld the sheer scale and might of the human vessel. Its weapons systems, as depicted in the hologram, were unlike anything they had ever encountered. High-powered energy beams, devastating missile batteries, and advanced defensive countermeasures that seemed to defy the very laws of physics. Hawkins allowed the image to linger, savoring the look of growing trepidation on the faces of the Galactic Council members. "This," he said, his voice cutting through the stunned silence, "is but a small glimpse of the power we now possess. We have spent centuries in exile, honing our skills and developing technologies that far surpass your own." The human general paused, his gaze sweeping across the room. "But we did not come here merely to flaunt our capabilities. We have a demand to make, one that you would do well to heed." The council members exchanged uneasy glances, their previous arrogance giving way to a growing sense of dread. What could these humans possibly want, and what would happen if they refused? "The time has come for humanity to reclaim its rightful place within the Galactic Council," Hawkins declared, his words carrying the weight of an absolute command. "Our exile was unjust, and we will no longer tolerate being treated as outcasts in our own galaxy." The chamber erupted into a cacophony of protests, with the alien representatives shouting and gesticulating in a desperate attempt to maintain their hold on power. But Hawkins remained unflinching, his expression unreadable as he waited for the din to subside. "You have a choice to make, esteemed members of the council," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "You can either welcome us back as equals, or you can face the consequences of your refusal." The threat hung in the air, thick and palpable, as the Galactic Council representatives fell silent, their faces etched with the dawning realization that their world was about to change forever. The chamber descended into chaos as the Galactic Council representatives erupted in a cacophony of panicked shouts and frantic pleas. They had never anticipated such a brazen challenge to their authority, let alone one backed by the overwhelming power of a human warship that defied all known technology. Amidst the bedlam, General John Hawkins stood motionless, his gaze unwavering as he surveyed the proceedings. The humans accompanying him mirrored his stoic composure, their expressions betraying no hint of emotion or uncertainty. Finally, after several minutes of pandemonium, the council's presiding overseer, a venerable Xenos matriarch, raised a hand, commanding the attention of the room. Slowly, the din subsided, and all eyes turned towards her. "This is an unprecedented and deeply disturbing development," the overseer began, her voice tinged with a mixture of disbelief and trepidation. "You claim to have returned with the power to challenge the very foundations of the Galactic Council, yet you offer us no proof of your sincerity, no assurances that your demands will not lead to the destruction of everything we have built." Hawkins inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the overseer's words. "Your concerns are understandable, honored overseer," he replied, his tone measured and diplomatic. "But I assure you, we have no desire to see the galactic order crumble. Our aim is not to usurp your power, but to reclaim our rightful place at your side." The overseer's eyes narrowed, her gaze skeptical. "And how do you propose we achieve this restoration of your status?" she asked, her voice laced with a hint of trepidation. Hawkins straightened his posture, his expression hardening. "It is quite simple, overseer," he said, his voice resonating with a quiet authority. "We demand that the council immediately revoke our exile and grant us full recognition and representation within your governing body." The chamber erupted once more, the alien representatives erupting into a chorus of outraged objections. How dare these humans make such an audacious demand? Their exile had been a hard-won victory, a necessary measure to maintain the delicate balance of power within the galaxy. The overseer raised her hand again, silencing the din. "And if we refuse your demand?" she asked, her gaze unwavering. Hawkins met her stare, his eyes burning with a fierce determination. "Then we will have no choice but to take what is ours by force." The threat hung in the air, palpable and uncompromising. The Galactic Council representatives fell silent, their faces etched with a growing sense of dread and resignation. They knew, deep down, that they were no match for the power that the humans now wielded. "You must understand, honored overseer," Hawkins continued, his voice tinged with a hint of regret. "Our exile was a grave injustice, one that we have endured for far too long. We have spent centuries honing our skills, developing technologies that surpass your own. And now we have returned to claim our rightful place, by any means necessary." The overseer's expression hardened, her eyes narrowing as she considered the human's words. "And what of the other member species?" she asked, her gaze sweeping across the chamber. "Do you truly believe they will simply accept your demands, even with the threat of your warship looming over us?" Hawkins allowed a faint smile to tug at the corners of his lips. "Oh, they will have no choice but to accept," he said, his tone laced with a quiet confidence. "For the alternative is the complete and utter annihilation of everything they have built." The overseer opened her mouth to respond, but before she could utter a word, the chamber was plunged into darkness, save for the eerie glow of the holographic display depicting the human warship. A collective gasp echoed through the room as the vessel's weapon systems suddenly sprang to life, their targeting arrays locking onto the Council's own defensive installations. "You have until the end of this solar cycle to convene and make your decision," Hawkins declared, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. "Failure to comply will result in the complete annihilation of your precious galactic order." With that, the holographic display winked out, and the chamber was once again plunged into darkness, save for the faint emergency lighting that flickered overhead. The Galactic Council representatives sat in stunned silence, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and disbelief. In the shadows, Hawkins and his human delegation turned and strode calmly towards the exit, their footsteps echoing through the chamber like the steady drum of an advancing army. The council members watched them go, their hearts pounding with a sense of impending doom. As the humans vanished through the grand doors, the overseer rose from her seat, her expression grim and resolute. "Summon the other counselors," she commanded, her voice ringing with a newfound determination. "We have much to discuss, and little time to do so." The fate of the Galactic Order now hung in the balance, and the Overseer knew that the decisions made in the coming hours would shape the course of the galaxy for generations to come. The Galactic Council chambers were alive with a frenetic energy as the representatives from across the galaxy convened in the wake of the humans' startling ultimatum. Debates raged, tempers flared, and alliances were hastily forged and broken in the desperate search for a resolution to the crisis. At the heart of the proceedings sat the Overseer, her expression a mask of calm determination as she presided over the chaotic discussions. She had summoned the Council's most senior members, each one a seasoned diplomat and strategist in their own right, and together they grappled with the momentous decision that now lay before them. "We cannot simply capitulate to these human demands," argued Orcs, the grizzled representative from the Xenos hegemony. "To do so would be to surrender the very foundations upon which the Galactic Order has been built." Several of the other representatives voiced their assent, their faces etched with a mixture of indignation and fear. "The humans have been exiled for a reason," declared Nelara, the matriarch of the Elder Conclave. "Their kind is as unpredictable as they are dangerous. We cannot trust them to uphold the delicate balance of power." The Overseer raised a hand, silencing the debate. "I understand your concerns, my friends," she said, her voice calm and measured. "But we must consider the consequences of rejecting their demands. The human warship poses a threat unlike anything we have ever encountered. If we refuse, they will not hesitate to use it to destroy us." Orcs scoffed, his gaze hardening. "Then let them try," he growled. "Our combined fleets are more than a match for their single vessel. We will crush them and restore the natural order of the galaxy." The Overseer shook her head, her expression grave. "You underestimate them, Orcs," she said. "The humans have had centuries to hone their skills and develop technologies that surpass our own. Their warship is only a glimpse of their true capabilities." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled representatives. "No, we cannot afford to meet their challenge with force. We must find another way, one that preserves the Galactic Order while also placating the humans." Nelara's eyes narrowed, her lips twisting into a frown. "And what, pray tell, would you suggest?" she asked, her tone laced with skepticism. The Overseer took a deep breath, her expression resolute. "We must grant them a seat on the council," she announced, her words cutting through the murmurs of dissent that immediately erupted. "Impossible," Orcs exclaimed, slamming his fist against the table. "After all they have done, all the lives they have cost us, we cannot simply forgive and forget." The Overseer held up a hand, silencing the Xenos representative. "I do not propose that we forgive their past transgressions," she said, "but we must acknowledge the reality of the situation we now face. The humans possess a power that we cannot hope to match, and if we refuse to accommodate them, they will not hesitate to use it to destroy us." Nylara's brow furrowed, her expression pensive. "And what assurances do we have that they will not simply use their newfound position to seize control of the council?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. The Overseer's gaze hardened. "We will demand concessions, of course," she replied. "Strict limitations on their military capabilities, as well as a binding agreement to uphold the principles of the Galactic Order. but we must give them a seat, or risk the annihilation of everything we have built." The chamber fell silent as the representatives grappled with the gravity of the overseer's proposal. They knew that she was right. The threat posed by the human warship was too great to ignore, and the consequences of refusing their demands could be catastrophic. After a long, tense moment, Arux sighed and slowly nodded his head. "Very well," he said, his voice laced with resignation. "We will grant them a seat on the council. But mark my words, Overseer, if they betray our trust, we will not hesitate to cut them down, no matter the cost." The Overseer inclined her head, her expression somber. "Agreed," she said. "We will extend the offer to the humans, but make it clear that any violation of our terms will be met with swift and decisive action." With that, the Overseer rose from her seat, her gaze sweeping across the assembled representatives. "We must act quickly," she said, her voice firm. "The fate of the Galactic Order hangs in the balance, and we cannot afford to delay." As the council members hurried to carry out the Overseer's instructions, a sense of unease and trepidation hung in the air. They knew that they were embarking on a perilous path, one that could either secure the future of the Galactic Order or lead to its utter destruction. But there was no turning back now. The die had been cast, and the humans' return had set in motion a series of events that would irrevocably change the course of the galaxy forever. The air in the Galactic Council chambers was thick with tension as the Overseer and her delegation approached the grand doors, prepared to deliver their offer to the waiting humans. Behind them, the assembled representatives watched with bated breath, their expressions a mix of apprehension and resolve. As the doors swung open, General John Hawkins and his entourage stood waiting, their postures exuding a quiet confidence. Hawkins' gaze swept over the Overseer and her companions, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Greetings, honored Overseer," he said, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. "I trust you and your esteemed colleagues have had time to consider our proposition." The Overseer inclined her head slightly, her expression guarded. "We have, General Hawkins," she replied, her tone measured, "and we have reached a decision that we believe will be acceptable to all parties." Hawkins' brow arched, his interest piqued. "Oh," he said, his gaze fixed intently on the Overseer. "Please, do enlighten us." The Overseer took a deep breath, her eyes meeting Hawkins' unwavering stare. "The Galactic Council has agreed to grant humanity a seat at our table," she announced, her words punctuated by a murmur of discontent from the assembled representatives. Hawkins' expression remained impassive, but a glimmer of triumph flickered in his eyes. "A most generous offer, honored Overseer," he said, his voice dripping with barely concealed satisfaction. "And what, pray tell, are the terms of this arrangement?" The Overseer's gaze hardened. "The terms are as follows," she began, her tone brooking no argument. "First, your military capabilities will be subject to strict limitations and oversight by the Council. Any violation of these restrictions will be met with swift and decisive action." Hawkins nodded, his expression unreadable. "Reasonable enough," he conceded, his tone nonchalant. "Secondly," the Overseer continued, "your representation on the Council will be limited to a single seat, with no more than 3 human delegates permitted at any given time. This is to ensure the balance of power remains intact." Hawkins' lips twitched in the faintest of smiles. "I believe we can accept those terms," he said, his gaze shifting to the assembled council members. "After all, we are simply seeking to reclaim our rightful place, not to dominate the proceedings." The Overseer's brow furrowed, her skepticism evident. "And lastly," she pressed on, her voice stern, "you must agree to abide by the principles and protocols of the Galactic Order. Any deviation from these established norms will result in your immediate expulsion from the Council." Hawkins inclined his head, his expression solemn. "Of course, honored Overseer," he said, his tone laced with sincerity. Humanity has no desire to disrupt the delicate balance that you and your colleagues have worked so hard to maintain. We simply wish to contribute our knowledge and expertise to the betterment of the galaxy." The overseer studied Hawkins' face for a long moment, searching for any hint of deception. Finally, she nodded, her expression softening slightly. "Very well, General Hawkins," she said, her voice carrying the weight of a solemn agreement. "The Galactic Council formally extends an invitation for humanity to rejoin our ranks." Hawkins' lips curled into a genuine smile, and he extended his hand to the overseer. "On behalf of the human species, I accept your offer," he said, his grip firm and unwavering. The overseer grasped Hawkins' hand, her own expression resolute. "Then let it be so," she declared, her voice ringing through the chamber. "Humanity has returned to the Galactic Council, and we shall see what the future holds." As the two delegations parted ways, a hush fell over the assembled representatives. Some wore expressions of begrudging acceptance, while others betrayed a lingering unease and resentment. The overseer, however, remained steadfast, her gaze fixed on the retreating form of General Hawkins. "May this decision not come back to haunt us," she murmured, the weight of her words hanging in the air like an ominous portent. Outside the council chambers, Hawkins and his entourage strode with a newfound air of triumph, their steps lighter and their bearing more confident. They had achieved their goal, reclaiming their rightful place in the galactic order, and the future now lay open before them. But as they made their way back to their towering warship, Hawkins couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the true challenge had only just begun. The Galactic Council, for all its apparent acquiescence, would be watching their every move, waiting for any sign of betrayal or deviation from the agreed-upon terms. Hawkins clenched his jaw, his expression hardening. He knew that the road ahead would be fraught with obstacles and potential pitfalls, but he was determined to navigate them with the same unwavering resolve that had brought his people this far. The humans had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. The chambers of the Galactic Council were abuzz with a palpable sense of unease as the human delegation took their newly assigned seat at the table. All eyes were fixed on General John Hawkins and his two accompanying delegates, a mix of apprehension and cautious curiosity etched on the faces of the alien representatives. Hawkins, for his part, maintained an air of calm confidence, his expression serene as he surveyed the room. The overseer, who presided over the proceedings, cleared her throat, drawing the attention of the gathered delegates. "We are now officially convened with the human species as a newly reinstated member of the Galactic Council," she announced, her voice carrying a tone of measured authority. "I trust that all parties will uphold the terms of our agreement to the fullest extent." Hawkins inclined his head in a gesture of affirmation, his gaze sweeping across the assembly. "Rest assured, honored overseer, that humanity has every intention of being a productive and cooperative member of this esteemed body," he said, his deep baritone resonating through the chamber. The overseer's brow furrowed slightly, betraying a hint of lingering skepticism. "That remains to be seen, General Hawkins," she replied, her tone laced with a subtle warning. "We shall be closely monitoring your delegation's actions and adherence to the established protocols of the Galactic Order." Hawkins offered a faint smile, his expression unperturbed. "Of course, honored overseer. We would expect nothing less." The proceedings continued, with the various council representatives introducing themselves to the human delegates and outlining the key issues and initiatives currently under discussion. Hawkins and his companions listened intently, occasionally exchanging a nod or a whispered remark, their expressions betraying neither discomfort nor eagerness. As the meeting progressed, the overseer could not help but notice the subtle shifts in the dynamics within the council chamber. The other delegates, once so uniformly opposed to the humans' return, now seemed to regard them with a mix of curiosity and guarded respect. There was an undeniable air of authority and competence that Hawkins and his team projected, and it was beginning to have a tangible impact on the proceedings. When the time came for the council to adjourn, the overseer caught Hawkins' eye, her gaze lingering for a moment. "A word, if you please, General, she said, her tone brooking no argument. Hawkins inclined his head, gesturing for his delegates to continue on without him. As the chamber emptied, he approached the overseer, his expression unreadable. "Honored overseer," he began, his voice low and measured. "I trust that our presence here has not caused undue disruption to the Council's operations." The overseer studied him for a long moment, her eyes narrowed. "On the contrary, General," she replied, her tone thoughtful. "Your delegation has conducted themselves with a degree of poise and professionalism that has impressed me, I must admit." Hawkins' brow arched, a faint hint of amusement tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I appreciate your candor, honored overseer," he said. "We have had many years to hone our skills and cultivate our diplomatic acumen." The overseer nodded, her expression grave. "Indeed, and therein lies my concern." Hawkins' expression sobered, his gaze trained on the overseer. "Concern," he echoed, his voice measured. "Your people have been exiled for centuries, General," the overseer said, her tone tinged with a hint of trepidation. "During that time, you have clearly developed capabilities that far surpass our own. I cannot help but wonder." She paused, her gaze searching Hawkins' face. "What are your true intentions?" Hawkins held the overseer's gaze, his expression unreadable. "Our intentions, honored overseer, are simply to reclaim our rightful place in the Galactic Order," he said, his voice steady and unwavering. "We have no desire to disrupt the delicate balance of power that you and your colleagues have worked so hard to maintain." The overseer's brow furrowed, her skepticism evident. "And yet, the mere presence of your warship outside our walls suggests otherwise," she countered, her tone laced with a hint of accusation. Hawkins inclined his head, acknowledging the overseer's point. "I understand your concern," he said, his voice softening slightly. "But I assure you, the warship is merely a symbol of our power and determination. We have no intention of using it against the Galactic Order, so long as you and your colleagues continue to uphold your end of our agreement." The overseer studied Hawkins for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders slumping ever so slightly. "Very well, General Hawkins," she said, her voice weary. "I will hold you to your word. But know this, the Council will be watching your every move, and any deviation from the terms of our agreement will be met with swift and decisive action." Hawkins nodded, his expression solemn. "Understood, honored overseer," he said, his voice low and grave. "We would expect nothing less." With that, the overseer turned and strode from the chamber, leaving Hawkins alone with his thoughts. The human general stood there, his gaze fixed on the empty doorway, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "The game has only just begun," he murmured, his words carried away by the echoes of the departing footsteps. As the Galactic Council sessions progressed, it became increasingly evident that the human delegation, led by the indomitable General John Hawkins, was quickly carving out a position of influence and respect within the august body. Despite the lingering unease and occasional outbursts of resentment from the other representatives, Hawkins and his team navigated the political landscape with a deft touch, leveraging both their expertise and the implicit threat of their towering warship. In the private chambers of the Council, the overseer found herself drawn into increasingly frequent and substantive discussions with Hawkins, their conversations marked by a curious blend of wariness and mutual understanding. The human general, for his part, seemed to relish the intellectual challenge, engaging the overseer in thoughtful debate and offering insights that often left her contemplating the implications long after their meetings had concluded. "You must understand, honored overseer," Hawkins said during one such encounter, his tone measured and earnest. "Humanity's exile was a grave injustice, one that we have borne for far too long. We have no desire to disrupt the balance of power within the Galactic Order, but we will not be relegated to the status of mere observers either." The overseer's brow furrowed, her gaze searching Hawkins' face. "And yet the very presence of your warship outside our walls suggests a less than benign intent," she countered, her voice tinged with a hint of accusation. Hawkins inclined his head, acknowledging the overseer's point. "I understand your concern, honored overseer," he said, his expression somber. "But I assure you, the warship is merely a symbol of our power and determination. We have no intention of using it against the Galactic Order, so long as you and your colleagues continue to uphold your end of our agreement." The overseer held Hawkins' gaze, her eyes narrowing slightly. "And what, pray tell, are the terms of this agreement, as you see them?" she asked, her tone measured. Hawkins offered a faint smile, his expression betraying a hint of amusement. "Why, the terms are quite simple, honored overseer," he said, his voice low and confidential. "We merely ask that humanity be granted the respect and recognition that we are rightfully due, both within the council chambers and throughout the galaxy at large." The overseer's brow arched, her skepticism evident. "And should the council fail to meet these expectations of yours?" she asked, her tone laced with a subtle challenge. Hawkins' smile broadened, his gaze unflinching. "Then I'm afraid we shall have no choice but to take matters into our own hands," he said, his words carrying the weight of a veiled threat. The overseer's expression hardened, her eyes narrowing. "You would do well to remember your place, General Hawkins," she said, her voice sharp. "The Galactic Council is not to be trifled with, and we will not tolerate any attempts to subvert our authority." Hawkins held up a placating hand, his expression contrite. "Of course, honored overseer," he said, his tone conciliatory. "I merely meant to convey the depth of our commitment to reclaiming our rightful place within the Galactic Order. We have no desire to engage in open conflict, but we will not be cowed into submission either." The overseer regarded him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders slumping ever so slightly. "Very well, General Hawkins," she said, her voice weary. "I will endeavor to ensure that the Council upholds its end of the bargain. But know this, any deviation from the agreed-upon terms will be met with swift and decisive action." Hawkins nodded, his expression somber. "Understood, honored overseer," he said, his voice low and grave. "We would expect nothing less." As the overseer watched Hawkins depart, a growing sense of unease settled in the pit of her stomach. She knew that the human general was a formidable adversary, driven by a deep-seated desire for vengeance and a steadfast determination to restore his people's place in the galaxy. And while he had thus far conducted himself with a remarkable level of diplomacy and restraint, the overseer couldn't shake the nagging feeling that it was all merely a facade, a calculated maneuver to lull the council into a false sense of security. Back in the council chambers, Hawkins rejoined his delegation, his expression thoughtful. The other human delegates regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and deference, their eyes searching his face for any hint of the true nature of their plans. "The overseer is a shrewd and formidable adversary," Hawkins murmured, his gaze sweeping across the assembled humans. "But she is also a woman of her word, and she values the stability of the Galactic Order above all else." One of the delegates, a woman with piercing blue eyes, leaned forward, her expression intent. "And what of the other council members, General?" she asked, her voice low and measured. "Surely they will not be so easily swayed by your diplomatic overtures." Hawkins offered a faint smile, his eyes glinting with a hint of predatory calculation. "Oh, they will come around. In time," he said, his tone laced with a quiet confidence. "Humanity has been exiled for far too long, and our return will irrevocably alter the course of the galaxy. The Galactic Council will have no choice but to accept our rightful place, even if it means they must bend to our will." The human delegation exchanged knowing glances, their expressions mirroring Hawkins' steely determination. The game had only just begun, and they were poised to play it with a ruthless mastery that would shake the very foundations of the Galactic Order. The Galactic Council chambers buzzed with a restless energy as the assembled delegates grappled with the growing influence of the human delegation. Led by the indomitable General John Hawkins, the humans had swiftly carved out a position of power and respect within the august body, their expertise and strategic acumen commanding the attention, and in some cases, the grudging admiration of their alien counterparts. Orcs, the grizzled Xenos representative, sat seething in his seat, his expression a mask of barely concealed animosity. "This is an outrage," he bellowed, slamming his fist against the table. "How can we allow these humans to waltz back into our midst and dictate the course of the galactic order?" The overseer raised a hand, her gaze trained on the Xenos delegate with a mixture of patience and steely resolve. "Calm yourself, Orcs," she said, her tone measured. "The humans have as much right to be here as any of us, and we must learn to work with them, for the good of the galaxy." Orcs scoffed, his lip curling in disdain. "Work with them?" He spat. "Forgive me, honored overseer, but have you so quickly forgotten the atrocities they committed, the lives they took, before we exiled them?" Hawkins, who had been listening to the exchange with a placid expression, leaned forward, his gaze fixed on the Xenos delegate. "I understand your anger, Orcs," he said, his deep baritone cutting through the din. "But you must understand that the humans of today are not the same as those who came before. We have learned from our mistakes, and we seek only to contribute to the greater good of the galactic order." Orcs's eyes narrowed, his expression twisted with contempt. "Contribute," he sneered. "You seek to dominate General Hawkins, and we would be fools to allow it." The overseer raised a hand, silencing the Xenos delegate once more. "Enough, Orcs," she said, her voice sharp. "The decision has been made, and the humans are now a part of this council. We must find a way to work together, lest we risk tearing the galactic order apart." Orcs's jaw tightened, but he reluctantly fell silent, his gaze smoldering with resentment. The other delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their expressions a mix of uncertainty and unease. Hawkins, sensing the tension in the room, leaned back in his chair, his expression calm and collected. "I understand your concerns, my friends," he said, his voice low and measured. "But I assure you, the humans have no desire to disrupt the delicate balance of power that has sustained the galactic order for so long." The overseer's brow furrowed, her gaze fixed on the human general. "And yet, the very presence of your warship outside our walls suggests otherwise, General Hawkins," she said, her tone laced with a subtle challenge. Hawkins inclined his head, acknowledging the overseer's point. "The warship is indeed a symbol of our power and determination," he conceded. "But I give you my word that it will not be used against the galactic order, so long as we continue to uphold the terms of our agreement." The overseer's eyes narrowed, her expression skeptical. "And what precisely are the terms of this agreement as you see them?" she asked, her voice tinged with a hint of trepidation. Hawkins offered a faint smile, his gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates. "Why, the terms are quite simple, honored overseer," he said, his tone oozing with confidence. "We merely ask that humanity be granted the respect and recognition that we are rightfully due, both within these hallowed halls and throughout the galaxy at large." Orcs's eyes widened, his expression darkening with outrage. "Respect," he spat. "You demand respect, when you have done nothing to earn it." Hawkins' expression hardened, his gaze unflinching. "We have earned our place here, Orcs," he said, his voice low and menacing. "Through centuries of exile and struggle, we have honed our skills and our determination, and we will not be denied our rightful place in the galactic order." The overseer raised a hand, her expression stern. "Enough, both of you," she said, her voice brooking no argument. "We will not resolve this issue through heated words and posturing. We must find a way to work together for the good of the galaxy." Hawkins inclined his head, his expression softening slightly. "Of course, honored overseer," he said, his tone conciliatory. "That is all we ask, the opportunity to contribute our knowledge and expertise to the betterment of the galactic order." Orux's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "And what, pray tell, do you expect in return for this, _contribution_?" he asked, his voice dripping with disdain. Hawkins' lips curled into a faint smile. "Why, nothing more than the respect and recognition that is rightfully ours, my friend," he said, his tone deceptively benign. "After all, is that not the foundation upon which the Galactic Order is built?" The Overseer's gaze shifted between the two delegates, her expression etched with a growing sense of unease. She knew that the delicate balance she had fought so hard to maintain was now teetering on the edge of a precipice, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. As the council meeting drew to a close, the Overseer found herself plagued by a nagging sense of dread. The humans had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. The tension within the Galactic Council chambers had reached a fever pitch as the delegates grappled with the increasingly bold demands and overt displays of power from the human delegation. Led by the uncompromising General John Hawkins, the humans seemed intent on asserting their dominance, heedless of the growing unease and resentment among their alien counterparts. Orcs, the grizzled Xenos representative, had become the most vocal and vehement opponent of the human encroachment, his outbursts a constant source of disruption during the council's proceedings. The Overseer, her expression etched with a mixture of resignation and determination, struggled to maintain order and find a path forward that would preserve the fragile balance of the Galactic Order. "This is madness," Orcs bellowed, his fist slamming against the table. "We cannot capitulate to these _demands, honored Overseer. The humans have forfeited their right to a seat at this council long ago, and we would be fools to grant them such power now." The Overseer raised a hand, her gaze fixed on the Xenos delegate. "I understand your concerns, Orcs," she said, her tone measured. "But the humans have already been granted a place here, and to revoke that now would risk plunging the galaxy into chaos." Orrux's eyes narrowed, his expression twisted with contempt. "Then we must remove them by force," he spat, his gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates. "Surely I am not the only one who sees the danger they pose to the Galactic Order." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber, as several of the other delegates nodded their assent, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and determination. Hawkins, who had remained silent throughout the heated exchange, leaned forward, his expression serene. "I would caution you against such rash actions, Orcs," he said, his deep baritone cutting through the din. "The humans have no desire to see the Galactic Order destroyed, but we will not be cowed into submission either." The Overseer's brow furrowed, her gaze fixed on the human general. "And what precisely are you proposing, General Hawkins?" she asked, her tone laced with a hint of trepidation. Hawkins offered a faint smile, his eyes glinting with a predatory gleam. "Why, merely that we continue to work together, honored Overseer," he said, his voice deceptively benign. "After all, the humans have much to contribute to the betterment of the Galactic Order, if only we are afforded the respect and recognition that is rightfully ours." Orcs scoffed, his lip curling in disdain. "Respect," he spat. "You demand it, but you have done nothing to earn it, _human_. Hawkins' expression hardened, his gaze unflinching. "We have earned our place here, Orcs, through centuries of exile and struggle," he said, his voice low and menacing. "And we will not be denied what is ours, no matter the cost." The Overseer raised a hand, her expression stern. "Enough, both of you," she said, her voice brooking no argument. "We must find a way to resolve this conflict, for the good of the galaxy." Hawkins inclined his head, his expression softening slightly. "Of course, honored Overseer," he said, his tone conciliatory. "That is all we ask, the opportunity to contribute our knowledge and expertise to the betterment of the Galactic Order." Orux's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "And what, pray tell, do you expect in return for this, _contribution_? He asked, his voice dripping with disdain. Hawkins' lips curled into a faint smile. "Why, nothing more than the respect and recognition that is rightfully ours, my friend," he said, his tone deceptively benign. "After all, is that not the foundation upon which the Galactic Order is built?" The Overseer's gaze shifted between the two delegates, her expression etched with a growing sense of unease. She knew that the delicate balance she had fought so hard to maintain was now teetering on the edge of a precipice, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. As the heated debate continued, the other delegates began to take sides, their loyalties divided between the humans and their more traditional Galactic Order allies. The chamber descended into a cacophony of shouting and accusations, with neither side willing to back down. Finally, the Overseer raised her hands, commanding the attention of the room. "Enough," she thundered, her voice echoing through the chamber. "We will not resolve this through further conflict. It is time for a vote." The delegates fell silent, their gazes fixed on the Overseer with a mixture of trepidation and anticipation. "The question before us is this," the Overseer said, her expression grave. "Shall we grant the humans the respect and recognition they demand, or shall we seek to remove them from the Galactic Council entirely?" The chamber erupted into a flurry of activity as the delegates hurried to cast their votes, their faces etched with the weight of the decision they were making. As the final tally was announced, the Overseer's expression remained inscrutable. "The vote is in," she declared, her voice carrying a hint of finality. "The humans shall be granted the respect and recognition they seek, and their place on the Galactic Council shall be secured." Arux's face contorted with rage, but before he could voice his objection, the Overseer raised a hand, silencing him. "This decision is final," she said, her tone brooking no argument. "The humans have returned, and the galaxy will never be the same." As the delegates filed out of the chamber, the Overseer turned to face Hawkins, her expression unreadable. "I hope, for the sake of us all, that we have not made a grave mistake," she murmured, her words carried away by the echoes of the departing footsteps. Hawkins watched the Overseer depart, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Oh, honored Overseer," he whispered, his voice tinged with a hint of triumph. "You have no idea what is in store for the Galactic Order."